guys, welcome to the show. Our new friend Jessica Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
If you would be so kind, let the people know where they can find you online, introduce yourself, and the movie that you brought with us today.
All right. I'm Jessica Scott. I'm a writer, film critic, cosplayer, horror fanatic. You can find me on Twitter at We Who Walk Here. I'm on Twitter all the time, sharing my writing and cosplay and podcast appearances and everything else. So Twitter at We Who Walk Here. And today's movie is Frankenhooker. Frank Henenlotter's 1990 riff on Frankenstein with some, obviously some hooker elements. It's amazing, like an exploitation, dark comedy. Yeah. Fantastic. I'm super excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it was, I was telling you before we started, it was really fun for me because I had actually never seen this. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really know what to expect. It was one of those, I was watching it in the living room taking notes, and my wife just kept walking by, what the hell is going on? What is this? And then finally, when it got to the, she fucking lost it when the gerbil exploded. And that was enough. She's like, all right, I'm going to sit down. And we just had a blast. This movie was so much more fun than I was anticipating. That was kind of the great reveal. What is it about this movie that just really lights you up when you decide to watch it?
It is so fun and so much smarter than I think you would expect a movie called Frankenhooker to be.
I agree 100%.
It's got more on its mind, but it's also just literally, let's have a mad scientist take a bunch of sex workers and build a woman and see just how wild and raunchy and out there we can be and still be just hilarious and so well made. Like, I'm a huge fan of B movies, and this is such a well-made movie that just the humor is perfect, the effects are perfect, it's just spot on. But like I said, I'm a fan of movies that surprise you, and when I first watched this movie, I was not expecting a lot. Frankenhooker, it looks so but at the same time, I was a big Frank Henenlotter fan, so I knew that my expectations were probably calibrated incorrectly.
Right.
And they definitely were. I was so blown away by just how smart and funny and eminently rewatchable it is. So
yeah, I guess when I turned it on, right, when this was on the list and I'd never seen it, I expected something more akin to like a Maniac, right? That this was going to be a guy just slicing and dicing. We're going to get a lot more of that kind of, low rent sleaze.
Yeah.
I agree. I was so taken aback by how funny this movie was. And it's hard because comedy and horror are both the timing genres, right? You have to be spot on in both or else they don't work. And the way they balanced that line was brilliant, right? Even just the opening is just a brain with this eyeball in it. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And that's kind of a good launch point into the rest of the movie, right? It's just this really, I think I was expecting it to be more off-puttingly sleazy than it was, but it's like that perfect cozy sleazy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got the perfect balance because it's never making fun of the sex workers in the movie. Yes. I think that's the important line that it rides. Like, it's not making fun of these women or, painting them as immoral or horrible people or, trying to pity them or something. To me, they are the heroes and the smartest people and the most capable people. And, so I think that's one reason why it doesn't get into like, oh, I feel like I need to take a shower after watching this area. Yeah.
Yeah, it is funny, right? Because it starts with this guy who's working on this brain, and then it just cuts to this backyard family barbecue, which is just one of those, like, what a great juxtaposition, right? In this super lawnmower, UHF lawnmower, right, mows this woman over in front of this whole gathering of friends and family. So again, it's that perfect blend of comedy and, oh my God, that would be traumatic, right? So this sends our lead on this hunt for body parts, right? Because the detective said she was a jigsaw. Right? Yeah. It was hard to tell what was left. And so, when he's finding the sex workers, right, he is going out as this, I'm going to hunt for people, right, and body parts. So I thought that was kind of a clever trick, right, is that is how most people and most lenses we get to see sex workers through is this, it's a meat store kind of thing, right? The same way you would go in and buy, like, cuts of meat, right? This one, he's out looking for that, but they don't really play into that when they're introduced, right? They're just this group of women who are doing a job, right? And they're not really pushed around or bullied by him. And I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's the actor is so funny and so personable and so perfect for the part, but he's definitely, just like Victor Frankenstein, he is the villain of the piece. He's the one, treating these women like literally dehumanizing them, like chopping them up into various body parts. And there are so many different dynamics at play, because you've got the fish out of water thing, because he's kind of the square guy from Jersey, crossing the bridge, and like
he does that Kurt Russell in Big Trouble Little China outfit.
Yeah. And he's got, suddenly he's like Dr. Jeffrey, and he's got the Poindexter thing going on amongst this world of like sex and drugs and the underworld of New York City. So I love that part where he thinks he's smarter than everybody around him, but he's really not. But again, he's so fun to watch. Like, so much of the movie is just him talking to rubber body parts, and it makes it, but it's still funny and really engaging, which is hard to pull off.
Yeah, God, it is a wonderful performance, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of these kind of movies sometimes lack, right? Mm-hmm. Is you're just trying to fill the void, right? Who can I get for this time and budget, whatnot? But even just simple things, right? Is he starting to talk to his mom as he's losing his kind of sanity, right? As his fiance is gone.
Yeah.
And we know he's kind of a strange character to begin with, right? But just the idea that he has like a couple of these quirks that you're like, that's really funny, but also deeply disturbing. Like making little kind of avatars for his fiance where he just tapes her picture onto a schematic of a body or a doll or a skeleton and talks to her. Mm-hmm. And then to try to prepare for the, his scavenging of these women on the street, right? When he started drilling his own brain, that was fucking insane. Like, I actually got like a chill down my spine when he just goes, night, night, 22, right? And whatever the fuck he's doing. Because at one point I was like, oh, he's kidding. He's not really going to. And they're like, oh, no, he's doing it. And then he continues to do it throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. In a way, kind of turning himself into this other version of a Frankenstein monster. Exactly. But he's like a really fascinatingly dark character, despite the, kind of surface level comedy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like your point that he's like his own monster, like his own version of the Frankenstein monster.
Yeah.
And it kind of puts the lie to him being this genius, even, Elizabeth's friend at the beginning is like, did he go to medical school? You're letting him operate on you? And he failed out. He got kicked out of 3 medical schools. I forgot
about you let him operate? Yeah, what a fucking thing to hear at a barbecue.
Right? Like, it immediately puts you in this, like, alternate universe where it's the 80s, but it's got this weird 50s, Donna Reed show sitcom machine to it.
Yeah.
And with the brain and everything, it's immediately kind of like, you're like, is this a creature feature?
Yeah.
Like the 50s atomic age thing going on. So I love that everything is so warped. Like, I just love Henenlotter's style where the world is just warped in this really funny, sleazy, fun way.
Yeah.
And, it makes perfect sense that she would be demolished by the supercharged lawnmower. With the news report is probably my favorite part of the entire movie.
Yeah, this is like RoboCop level fake TV.
Yes.
That was one of the things I really loved watching this.
Yeah.
I will say, though, I have a question I want to ask you, right? Because he has this line when he's talking to his mom, and he's like, I'm afraid I'm becoming deeply amoral. I thought that was such a deflection, right? Because one of the fun things is he's like always kind of explaining away his terrible behavior. Mm-hmm. Where did he get that fucking brain and eyeball at the start of the movie? And why does his mom and fiance not seem upset by that?
Exactly. Nobody ever questions what it is, why it's there.
It's just in his fish tank now.
Right, yeah. That's just Herbert, the eyeball and brain guy. No, yeah, I don't know. I love that, like, and what was he before if he wasn't already amoral? I'm so curious about, what he went through to get the brain and the eyeball.
Yeah.
To begin with.
Yeah, I was just, that was something I was like, I thought they were going to explain that away a little bit, right? And clearly his serum only works on women, right? Mm-hmm. So this feels like perhaps he was already more amoral. But I like that idea, right? Because again, that's very Frankenstein. This, I'm going to play God, and it's important that I do this. Why is it important, Victor? Well, because I'm the one who has to do it, right? There's no like
Right.
grandiose, I'm going to save human beings, right? When he brings the monster back, it's this desecrated, creature that then has this horrifying experience, right? As kids, we think he's the monster. And then, yeah, like you said, as you get older, you're like, oh, Victor's the fucking monster for sure. And I like the equivocating, right? And then as you pair that with him walking through the streets of New York, right? As they're going through this kind of drug boom and all that, I thought it was this really funny kind of inversion, as you said, right? Where he is really the one who's kind of lying and being immoral to himself. The rest of these people are just out surviving, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we all do a little drugs. We all party a little bit. They're working, right? But he's sitting there, and we're supposed to look at New York as it's the scary place instead of this kind of 50 suburb thing. So I thought that was a really cool thing they built in, is listening to him constantly make excuses for why he is worse than these people that he's coming to just prey upon.
Yeah, they draw so many parallels between him and Zorro, who is this,
Yeah.
the pimp who beats up his girls and bosses them around, is really cruel to them. I like
Brands
how
them. That was fucked up too.
yes, oh my God, and it's so crude and like it looks so painful. Not that branding would ever not be painful, but just it looks so like angry and like
Yeah. There's a hatefulness to it built in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I love, Elizabeth, they try the way they try to make Patty Mullen look fat by kind of dressing her in a somewhat loose garment at the beginning, But I love that they set up Jeffrey doesn't get her a new body that looks like her old body. He gets her a new improved body with the supermodel looks.
That was another fucked up scene, right? When he's having dinner with the head.
Yeah.
Which I loved, right? The head and like random hands are lying around. The wine's pouring from the neck. And he has these, for lack of a better word, it looks like my child's artwork, just creepier, right? Like a lot creepier. Right. Where it's like, here's a body, like it's like a pornography body. And then like he tapes her head on it.
Yeah.
And he knows that she's not It's so, that's what I mean. This movie is subtly much darker than, like when you finish the movie, you're kind of, you finish with a big laugh. I think when you think back, you're like, this guy has a very deep and severe psychosis somewhere going on.
Yes.
Just the thing, right? Like, what about this body? What about this one? Yeah, because why not just go find someone that looked very similar to her? A sister, something like that. No, this specifically is for him.
Yeah.
Which makes that ending extra delicious, which we'll get to. But yeah, right. What do you make of this choice of him? That scene I thought was funny. It's very crass by today's standards, but him going through and doing the judging of the body parts.
Yeah.
It's very funny. I was like, this is a lot, but it was this kind of weird funny, but we know what's going to happen, right? This whoever wins, I'm going to make a new woman out of you. What did you make of this segment of the film?
I thought it did a really good job of having its cake and eating it too, because it's exploiting, like it's being exploitative in that it's just TNA. Like we are just seeing, bare breasts,
literally writing check marks on butts and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're looking at these women's thighs and we're looking at, all these body parts and they're fully on display, but we're also making fun of people who reduce women to body parts and show how like pathetic they are. Like he reduces them, but he doesn't know what to do with the women. Like he's not engaging with them sexually. He's just judging them and like they're getting really exasperated with him. Like he's objectifying them, but he's such a dork. Like it's making fun of him for being that way,
Yeah, they're even at one point like, are we getting paid for this stupid shit? Like, like they can't even fathom what's that. It's also a fun scene because it somewhat calls into question his quest in general, right? You're like, was he really like that nice and loving of a fiance? Because he seemed pretty off-put at the start, and then now he's pining back, right? But you're like, is this his chance to remake his fiance the way that he wished she was, right? Exactly. More in control, more, to his choosing, instead of someone that he had to acquiesce to occasionally. A very rare occasion, it seemed like. So, yeah, I think that's a great point you make.
Yeah, because he's already, stapled her stomach. He's trying to remake her in his image already when she's alive. But now that she's dead, he's like, this is a great opportunity for me to get exactly what I want.
So fucked up.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so horrendous. Like it's the opposite of love. It's the opposite of, what you would expect from someone's fiance. It's so
Yeah.
perverse, but it's like anti-sex by sexualizing her. It's such a weird contradiction that I
Yeah.
really like.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's very masturbatory, right? Because it does
Mhm.
just put into question, too, like, how did she end up with this fucking loser? Right?
Right.
And it is just this, like, small town. That's what you do. People fall
Mhm.
into it, right?
Yeah.
And then just on top of, as we're doing this kind of, sleazy meat market thing, this is another evidence, right? Where you're like, this guy is such a bad person. He intentionally put the super crack in with the dollars,
Hmm.
right? He wanted to get at it. I don't believe him for a second that, no, don't take that. You'll kill yourself, right? Compared to when he's doing the Nancy Reagan line in his bedroom, right? Just say no. Just don't do it. Right? As we're watching this kind of, old conservative dress down this lady who's trying to fight for sex worker rights.
Yeah.
And he's taking the side of, he thinks he's on the right side, but then he starts doing, they're like, well, crack will kill him. I'm not killing him. Why do you think he brought that super crack there?
He wants the illusion of being a good person. He wants the illusion of being better than these women. They have been given drugs by their pimp to make it easier to do what they do.
Yeah.
And it's clearly these women are being exploited by men throughout the movie. But he's giving himself enough cognitive dissonance to separate himself. Like, well, I'm a good person. I'm from the suburbs. I work a quote unquote respectable job.
Right.
I am not giving these women anything. They're making their own choices. He's just like,
stole it from me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
As he's threatening not to pay them.
Yeah, like if you hand anybody a bag full of money and drugs,
yeah,
even if they're not already addicted to
in my
drugs.
20s, that was the fantasy I had every time I left my house.
I mean,
I'm gonna find a big bag of money and awesome party drugs, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's allowing himself distance to pretend he's a good person when he's the worst, one of the worst people in the movie.
Just the fucking worst, man. Because even the way he just is picking up the body parts and he just chucks them off the fire escape, I was like, that is just so degrading. I will say it is one of my new favorite movie scenes of all time, is watching the prostitutes begin to explode.
Oh my God.
That is one of those scenes that you're like, in my mind on paper, right? Prostitutes exploding from super crack. You're like, that sounds funny. And then you start seeing the mannequins and fireworks and you're like, no, this can't be as awesome as it is. And it works. I don't know how the fuck it works, but it absolutely does. And it is an absolute joy to experience.
It is. Like, they lean into how ridiculous it is. Like,
Yes.
the girls get into their pose that's going to match the mannequin. Then we cut to the mannequin exploding. Like, it's so perfectly cheesy. It's like, I will defend B movies till the day I die because it's so well done. It's not like, oh, it's so bad it's good. No, it's just so well done.
It's just good.
So funny. It's just good.
It's just good. The mannequins blowing up somehow is just awesome.
It
right?
is.
Not in like a cringing way. It's so like when the leg shoots as a missile or the prostitute's head flies and explodes and knocks Zorro out. I'm like, that's just brilliant. That's
brilliant.
just absolutely brilliant.
It's such good comedy. It's such good writing. It's so well done. Like, the effects are so funny, but like really disturbing. Like, they're so cartoony, but it's still really disturbing to see a room full of body parts, Yeah.
Yeah, he's just picking them up. Oh, this one's well done. Right? And it's like, oh my God, you fucking creep. This leads way to our rise of the Frankenhooker, right? The titular Frankenhooker.
Mm-hmm.
This scene was awesome. This is something you mentioned earlier, right? Him talking to the body parts as he's picking them out. He's kind of rushing. He's not matching them anymore, right? The actual evidence of his work, right, is he has this freezer full of women body parts in the estrogen stew, right? He no longer seems like he's building this idealized woman anymore, which I thought was an interesting turn, right? Because I thought this was going to go more of a weird science route, right? Where it's like, look what I created. The results of his work are pretty heinous to look at, right? And so you have to ask yourself, right? Is this secretly how he actually thought this was going to go the whole time when he's picking up exploded body parts? Is there something about keeping him, even when he describes her to other people, right? Like, she looks pretty gross, right? She's tall and hot, but like pretty gross. You won't like her. She's mine. What did you make of his design? And I thought the birth and the lightning was great. What do you make of this scene?
Well, first of all, I love Hattie Mullen's performance for echoing Elsa Lanchester's like really
Yes.
sharp movements, when the bride is born. But I think again, I think it's making fun of guys like Jeffrey who are like, well, I like my girl, I love my girlfriend, but I wish she had this actress's breast, this actress's thighs, this
Right.
actress's,
Yeah.
when
Without the foresight to be like, she also wishes you look like Chris Hemsworth and Ryan Reynolds and had cheekbones and yeah.
Yeah, like when you create this monster in your mind, it's hideous. It's not like the perfect woman. It's this like monster of like it's unnatural because you're cherry picking all these things by again dehumanizing people.
Yeah. Right. It's as if, what's inside of you doesn't matter, right? If I could just mosaic this to what I want. I just thought it was awesome. And I thought it was so rewarding when she wakes up and somehow, even though it's her head, she has this jarble of the various prostitutes' minds, right? So his crimes will not go unanswered, right? He can't just sweep it under the rug and go back to this fucking suburban life, right? And when she just says, hey, you looking for company? You got any money? He's like, I got no money. And she fucking smacks the shit out of him. That is such an absolutely rewarding film moment.
It is. Oh, it's so. And when she's approaching potential Johns on the street and they're like, they insult her or they don't have money, she beats the shit out of them too. It's
smacking
so,
everyone.
Yeah, it's really cathartic to watch her just beat up men.
Yeah, in a weird way, seeing a prostitute character get to be her own pimp is so rewarding, right? Like, I will do the defending of myself. I have enough agency to do that. And just, smacking people or people are taking pictures of her and mocking her, just, and then that gets taken to another extreme level, which is hilarious. She has natural built-in creep defenses.
Yes.
Right? Because we get this guy who looks like that terrifying guy from Human Centipede 2, right? He's kind of this modern, sweaty, bulbous Peter Lorre looking guy, right? Just looks like he was born to play a horror movie monster, right? Everything on him is protruding in all the right place to make him very scary, right? This guy looks like that, and he's like, I like it. Let's play doctor. And this is where we realize that she has some kind of mechanism that transfers the electricity into the body and blows him up as they're engaging in the act, right? Which is also an amazing moment because we see his body explode and she holds the head up and he goes, that was a great time. It's so
he's
awesome.
So enraptured with the decapitated head. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and it's so good because that scene I thought was interesting, right? Because he's a guy who seemingly hasn't done anything wrong, right? Everyone else who gets it seems to have brought that on themselves specifically, right? He just seems like a guy who might have had some underlying demons. And I was like, am I as a viewer just assigning this to this guy because he's so excited for this situation? Right? What did you make of this guy's explosive ending?
Well, on top of it just being hilarious.
Fucking
and
hilarious.
I love that she has that defense mechanism. Clearly this is a woman in distress. But he doesn't care. He doesn't care that she's obviously not well and she's not really in full possession of her faculties.
He is excited by her unwell. There, you nailed it. That's what it wasn't putting words to. Yeah. So that's an excellent point, right? He is excited by the level of not okay she is.
Right.
Which is very bad, right? And then she gets out and goes, and I love the scene where she goes back into the bar, right? And Zorro's friend tries to get frisky under the table. He fucking explodes, right? In a fireball. Yeah. And then she gets to fucking smack Zorro, which I loved. Yes. I thought, what do you make of her return to the bar scene where her and Zorro finally reconfront?
I love the idea that she has, it's like, the book The Body Keeps the Score, where like trauma is like held in your body. I love that she has the memories of these women. Like she's got one woman's arm, one woman's hand, woman's leg, and she remembers all these things and she's like getting revenge for all of them. Like I see her as like an avenger, like this righteous sex worker going in and finding everybody who wronged her and just beating the shit out of all of them.
Yeah.
She's such a hero
Yeah,
to me
it's
in
this
this
weird,
movie.
like, I'm going to go back because this is what my body remembers, but also,
Uh-huh.
like, I'm coming back with some mustard this time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I thought that was cool. And then it was Zorro knocks her head back, right? And electricity's frying out everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Again, I thought a really subtly disturbing scene is when Frank just, like, snaps the head back down and drags her out, and she's just kind of stumbling. And I was like, Jesus Christ, that doesn't look like a date rape scene.
Yeah,
It's very
exactly.
fucking scary. This movie has really scary imagery.
It does. Yeah, like a lot of horror comedies like lean way more into the comedy than the
Yeah.
horror, but it under the surface there are so many disturbing things going on. The way these women are treated, the way Elizabeth is treated before and after her, reincarnation or
Right.
resuscitation, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever the fuck that was with the lightning.
Right.
That's what I was like, did the lightning do the outfit and everything, right? Like,
Right?
did
Yeah,
Frank
like
pick that
magically.
outfit out, you creep? Like, what's happening here? But yeah, I don't know, man. I think that's one of the wonderful elements, right? Is that while it is, because I agree with you, right? I am not a huge horror comedy person all the time because I think the horror is just there to try to sell a comedy, right? Like, it's just kind of window dressing, and you're not playing with that element, which is mostly why I'm there, right? And I think this one really walks a fine line, right? That the finale is just pure Reanimator, and it's fucking awesome, right? When they make it back, I thought it was a terrifying idea that the fiance wakes up again in this mutated body. Because she starts out with this line, right? Like, oh my God, that's so wonderful what you did. It's a miracle. And then she looks down.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck have you done, right? What did you think
Yeah.
of her re-emerging as the main mind for this finale?
Oh man, it's such good body horror.
So
Like
good.
it's like I'm cis, so I can't speak to this, but the idea of looking at your body and feeling like it's all wrong, I think is such a cool trans allegory. And I have a lot of trans friends who love this movie. But it's such good body horror to look down and not recognize your own body and not
Yeah.
recognize yourself and feel like you're disconnected. And also the kind of like society moment when all the body parts come out of the freezer
I
for their
fucking love
vengeance.
that so
Oh
much.
my God.
Like
It's
the
so
stomach with the mouth
disturbing,
at the top and the head with the legs. Oh my God.
Yes.
Awesome. Not
So
only that,
good.
but then they drag Zorro's ass back into the
Uh-huh.
freezer, right? The lady freezer.
Yes.
I thought that was
Yes.
amazing.
Oh, it's so good. And that's this finale is so fantastic. I know I said the newscast is my favorite part, but that's also in the running because
Right.
it's such a good scene where, and Elizabeth gets her comeuppance, the women in the freezer get their comeuppance. And that's such a trope, women in freezers, like, and in comics we talk about fridging women, things like that. So like that they crawl out and work together and get their vengeance on this guy who treated them like shit.
Yeah.
It's just it's so, and
Yeah.
at the same time it's creepy and funny, like it's just perfectly done.
Yeah. Well, it's this, you can dismember me and use me for what you want, but we're not fucking staying buried, right? We're coming out and having our revenge, right? It's a willful kind of zombie moment,
Yeah,
right? Which I fucking
absolutely.
thought that was brilliant. Walk me through your thoughts as we see the ending, right? Because our mad scientist got his head lopped off by Zorro, right?
Mhm.
And then we see the fiance pick the head up and stare at it. What is going through your mind as we hit the final image of this movie?
It's such a serves you right. How does it feel now moment?
Yeah, how the fuck does it feel?
Right, because he gives her again this perfect body, like a supermodel body instead of what she presumably had before. Which I'm not saying that when she was quote unquote fat, she's wearing something slightly loose.
Yeah.
She wasn't fat, but that doesn't make her not beautiful. But in the world of this movie, that's what people think.
Right.
And
he is our lens for the first half of the film. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So when he gets this body that he doesn't want, and he looks down and sees something that doesn't belong to him, and he feels all that horror, it's so delicious. It's such a good way for her to take charge and be in control and say, this is how you made me feel. That's probably how he made her feel before she died.
Yeah. How about that line, whose boobs are these?
Yeah.
Exactly, motherfucker. You know,
Exactly.
fucking exactly. Whose boobs are these, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Again, just the thought that she thinks this is a miracle, and he's like, "No, I woke you up to essentially be like a sex doll."
Yes.
I mean, imagine what's going through her mind. Not only just what's actually chemically happening out there, but then she's like, "This is why you brought me back." You know
Yeah.
what I mean? This is how you really wanted me the whole time, right? This whole idea of their marriage and love just crumbling.
Exactly. She thinks the love of her life has done something horribly unnatural, but so romantic.
So
Like
you brought me back
just,
so we could live forever. Oh wait.
yes, yeah. I will defy God. I will defy the natural order to bring you back, but only if you're way hotter.
Right.
It's
Until
just,
that last sentence, you were selling like a great
yes.
romance novel, right? And then it's like, oh, not so much anymore.
Yeah. No, this is a horror story. Yeah.
it's so fucking just perfect, right? Because even he's like, "Where's my Johnson?" And it's like, "Sorry, dude, this is you now." And then she just goes, "It's okay. We get to be together again."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And just throwing this fucking idea back in his face. Because
Exactly.
in my heart of hearts, I have to hope that after this movie, she's just like, "Fuck you, man. I'm out."
Yeah.
Like,
oh,
just
yeah.
leaving him to his own device, right? Now he's got to go
Mhm.
find another assistant to try to undo whatever. And that's kind of the cruel trick of what he's done, right?
Mhm.
Why did he develop an estrogen blood serum that only regenerates women? Probably because he's a woman murderer, right?
Mhm.
And so now the only way to continue his fucking evil existence is to be in another body that he doesn't want.
Yes.
And that is just poetically justice.
Exactly. He's doomed to be the thing that he hates because, he
Yes.
says he loves Elizabeth, but this is a man who hates women, clearly. Yeah. And he's doomed to be the one thing that he hates and thinks is less than him. Yeah.
This is how you always know he doesn't even respect his own mother. Like, that's
Mhm.
always a red flag for me, man. If you don't even respect your own mother, right? Like, how the fuck? But he's just, I thought it was just so awesome, too, because there's this kind of image where he gets to kind of see himself in a mirror.
Mhm.
And again, it's just like, it's wonderful that the movie's like, "Here, motherfucker, examine what you truly are," right? This fully expose what he is in his heart and soul is a guy that fucking mangles women
Yeah.
for his own fucking pleasure. This is what you have wrought upon yourself. Surprisingly sharp ending for this kind of a film. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I I'm such a huge Henenlotter fan. He's so like I know that like horror and exploitation fans don't think this, but I think maybe the general public thinks of exploitation movies, especially just the name itself is kind of provocative. And they think of it as like being, poorly made movies that are immoral, that are just appeal to the most prurient of interests. But that's not the case. We know that. And, movies like this are sharp. They have a lot more to say about the real world than some maybe more prestigious movies, I think, and this is not a movie that's afraid to get dirty, that's afraid to, poke fun at itself, but also make a good point. Like, I'm a fan of movies that are fun just for the sake of being fun. I don't think everything has to have like,
No.
it's deeper, it's smarter than you think. No, sometimes you just want to see people explode, but I do think
sometimes you just want to see people explode should be a t-shirt. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
But see, I love a good highbrow horror movie as much as the next, but sometimes this movie still gets a lot across, about this predatory nature of men and disrespecting women, but still manages to be fucking fun. And that's okay.
Exactly.
I agree with you, right? Most people who are not into this kind of stuff, right, will probably just see the, cover, right? Frankenhooker in that picture and be like, I know what that movie is. Maybe on some level, that's what I did, right? When I expected this kind of maniac, bloodfest.
Yeah.
I think that, because that's the thing, right? All horror movies are challenging or destroying a status quo, right? That's what they do.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that you think is normal and used to. What if that were gone, right? And sometimes that's scary, and sometimes it's scary how much better it would be, right? And so I think this movie does exactly what a great horror movie is supposed to do without sacrificing, the exploding bodies and the electric sex, all the kind of stuff, right, that you really are excited to see.
Yeah, and it's such a good adaptation of the source material. You might see Frankenhooker and be like, "Oh, that's a cheap Frankenstein knockoff. It has nothing. They don't understand the book." No, it perfectly understands the book and what it's saying about, people who try to play God and become monsters by thinking you know, they know better than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
They can manipulate people to their own ends. You know, it understands the source material perfectly and tells it in a really fresh and funny and interesting way, which
Yeah.
is all you can ask of an adaptation like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting place, right, to put the mindset of Victor Frankenstein just into an abusive relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how you're trying to change and damage someone so that you can rebirth them as you want, right?
Exactly.
I don't know. I think this movie's got a lot more on its mind, right? I think you said
Yeah.
that earlier. This movie's saying a lot.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that the right audiences find this, and it's like, finally, fucking thank you, right? Because we don't see enough movies where, you know, the abused girlfriend or wife or sex worker or whatever have their day in court, as it were, right? Cosmic court, right? In the street
Right, right.
justice.
Yeah.
And I think it's this wonderful blend. It reminds me, one of my favorite movies that almost everyone I know despises is Head of the Family, right? And I just think that's the same kind of thing. It's so much funnier and sharper than you expect that movie to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like when those people got hired to do the job, they could have phoned it in, right? This is the, you know, giant head in a wheelchair, whatever. But then at the end, we're doing like community theater, Joan of Arc and and you're like, what the fuck? Like these guys went the extra mile, right? They didn't just take the paycheck. And that's how I feel about Frankenhooker, right?
Yeah.
When you take B kind of stuff, but you put all that extra touches in it, that it just rises above what it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just an absolute miracle in filmmaking.
Absolutely. Like, you know, Patty Mullen and James Lawrence give two of my favorite performances in horror, legitimately, in this movie. Like, this movie doesn't work without them, even though, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on anybody else in the cast or crew, but like, they give it their all and they do it so perfectly that it's just, I think this is a fantastic movie. This is not something that I have to qualify like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, but I like this movie called Frankenhooker. No, Frankenhooker rules.
Frankenhooker fucking rules. I was already thinking when we have our Halloween party this year, I'm like, that's definitely one of the background movies I'm playing. Because everyone's going to be like my wife, like, wait, are they exploding? And then they're going to want to watch what's happening. I thought it was wonderful. So as we're getting out of here, would you like to tell everyone one more time where they can find you and all your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at We Who Walk Here. I write for my own site, wewhowalkhere.com, film cred /film, a lot of other places. But yeah, I always share my writing, my cosplay, my podcast appearances, and just my random thoughts on horror movies I'm watching that day on Twitter at We Who Walk Here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for gifting Frankenhooker into my life. I didn't know how much I needed that movie.
Right? Yes,
it was an absolute wonderful talk. You are welcome to come back anytime with any movie. Yeah, guys, so go find Jessica, and we'll see you again tomorrow for yet another horror movie, because 31 days, 31 pods. Bye.